Hello there, everybody. I hope you're having a good weekend and a good day. And where I am, I'm recording this at the end of August. We're looking forward to the beginning of September and Labor Day, at least in the United States. And I'm just having a really hard time with the idea that it's almost September and technically, unofficially, at least in America anyway, or the United States. This is considered the end of unofficial end of summer, and it's like, when did this happen? It was just June, wasn't it? But anyway, that's beside the point. Um, Today I was wanting to talk about choices and some of the choices we all make. And so that's where this quote came from. This is from Zig Ziglar, who was a motivational speaker, may still be now that come to think of it. But think in terms of what we've got here before I get into my comments on it. Your life is a result of your choices. If you don't like your life, it's time to make better choices. Remember, sometimes it's the smallest decisions that can change your life forever. Your life is the result of your choices. Now, some of you are going to say something to the effect of that, no, my life is the result of other people's choices. And that's not true, really. Because essentially, all right, let's put it this way. This is a person over here, and this is you. Somebody does something. You still have the opportunity to respond to what this person does. You can like it, you can dislike it, you can accept it, you can argue with it, you can do anything. Maybe this person does something and you always fight back. Maybe this person does something and you never fight back. You have a response to every single opportunity, every single instance that comes in your face, in your life, in your way, in your day. Your choices are related to how you respond to those particular instances. From the moment in which you wake up in the morning or the alarm goes off, do you make a choice to get out of bed or do you make a choice to hit snooze? Till the moment you basically go to bed at night, or at least fall asleep, and then at which point you don't make any more choices for the rest of that night. But you're always making some kind of choice, some kind of reaction to anything that you encounter during the course of the day, which therefore means any choice you make during the encounter of your life. If you've ever been in a situation in which you're saying something to the effect of, why does this always happen to me? It's got something to do with the choices you make. So let's just say, for the sake of argument, you say something to the effect of, why do I always encounter the wrong people for me? Uh, to simplify this as I'm talking about it, I'm just going to say a woman looking at choice of a man. Could be a man looking for a choice of a woman, but that gets complicated if I make it really vague. But anyway, so the woman's going into and says, why do I always run into creeps or lousy men or some such thing like that? Let's back that up. What does she do? How does she get there? If she always goes to the same places after work, does she go to the same kind of restaurants? Is she attracted by the same kinds of things? If she goes to let's say on Friday nights, she goes to a particular bar. Does she go to the same bar? Does she go to the same kind of bar? Does she get attracted by the same kinds of behaviors? And when somebody comes up, does she say the same things? Because you'll notice that if you sat back and watched this particular woman here that I'm talking about for this example, you would probably be able to easily see that she's got a particular routine that she follows pretty much all the time. She may not be aware of it. She may think she's doing something different, but the odds are she's doing something different, but in the same way. Now, by that I mean maybe let's say she's at the bar and there may be three different people, and she's saying, oh, normally I would take that guy. I'm going to say something about that one. The three guys are still basically the same thing. So for her to choose between one of the three, it's a small difference because the three guys are basically more or less the same choices. Now, if you want to get it a little bit more potentially personal, if you're looking at food when you're sitting there watching Netflix and you're saying, I'm going to watch what I eat, you maybe change your snacks, but are they still high calorie snacks? Are they still high salty snacks? Are they healthy or unhealthy snacks? Do you tend to go for the same kinds of things? You may be choosing a different snack in the sense that maybe you're taking, say, Cheetos instead of potato chips, but you're still basically taking the same kind of thing. Does this make sense? So when you're looking at the choices you make, you may be thinking you make different choices, but when you come right down to it, somebody else may on the outside may be thinking you're doing the same thing. So back to my example of the woman going to the bar on Friday, maybe she needs to go to a different kind of a place. Maybe instead of going to the bar, maybe she talks to a friend. Maybe somebody else has said, "Why don't you come with me to go someplace?" And she gets invited out to go to another restaurant or some such thing. And she says, "Oh no, I can't do that." Now we start running into an issue. I can't go there because I'm not good enough. I don't look like I'm supposed to. I'm not dressed right. I can't do this because. So what's the because about? What's going on in your head? You've got a choice in there that you can't do something because I'm not tall enough, I'm not old enough, I'm not, well, maybe in some cases you might be too young to go some places, but I'm going to guess that that's not the case for most of you who are watching this. But in many cases, you've got opportunities to do things and you don't do it because you've got some kind of voice in your head saying, I can't do that because. That's a choice. And who says you can't do that? And who says it should be changed? Now, if it's illegal or immoral, and we won't talk about fattening here, that's a totally different issue. You can't kill people because, it's just generally not the thing that most people find acceptable. Okay, I'll grant you that. But generally speaking, if you can't go to a restaurant after work with another friend because why? If your friend asked you, or you think it's a friend anyway, there must be a reason that somehow they did that they think that you could go in, unless you think they're setting you up for some reason. Now, if you think they're setting you up for some reason, then that's a whole different issue. And you might need to check something out to get another interpretation about what's going on here. But generally speaking, let's just assume the positive. And you've got somebody that will do that because. Okay, because why? The moment you start making a different choice, you're going to change the trajectory of your life in some small way. Now, you may not be able to see it immediately, but you may see it later. I'm sure that if you think about it at some point in time and think about it long enough, there's some choice you made in your life that you look back and said, my life changed at this moment, or I had an option to do this and I, chose this and I'm down on this and I'm down on this path because of the choice I made way back when. Same thing happens today. If you want a different life, you need to make some different choices. Do you follow where I'm coming from with this? Because most of us do the same thing day in and day out based on things that we've done before. And we don't really question why we do those things. Frequently, not always, but frequently, it's because our head is telling us that we can't do that because. And as I've said before, and I'll say again, our head lies to us. Our brains work on a concept that they're trying to protect us, but they're living and working under a concept that's a few millennia old. They're thinking in terms of, I don't want you to go to any place I don't know about because there might be a saber-toothed tiger over there, or somebody with an axe, and it might be somebody from the other tribe and they're trying to kill you. This is not likely to happen anymore. We haven't seen saber-toothed tigers for a few millennia. But your brain is telling you things that, generally speaking, are no longer true. Your brain may be telling you, or they did several people 100 years or so ago, not to get into motor vehicles because they were dangerous. Yeah, they are dangerous, but they're not quite as dangerous for the same reasons that people 100 years ago thought. Because they thought that a horse was safer. A horse and buggy was safer than a car. It may still very well be, but for very different reasons. So in many cases, when our brain is telling us you can't do this because it's the brain is making things up based on things that have happened before. And in some cases, things that you may never have experienced, but it's just the way the brain has developed over the course of millennia because it's basically trying to keep you safe. And that's the brain's job, is to keep you safe, to keep you alive. The problem is that its definition of safe and keeping you alive is not necessarily fitting with the way we work today. Because if the brain had its choice, we would never get into automobiles or airplanes or anything else like that because they would see that as being somewhat scary. This is partially why children somewhat get scared of these things, is because their little brains are geared to the idea of saying, that's not the way things are supposed to be. That's not safe because it's new and different. Many of the things that you scared of aren't really going to work out as bad as you think they are. And even if you try something like get into a plane or some such thing like that, you're probably not going to end up having a negative experience. Well, you're probably not going to die. You may have a negative experience because of a variety of other things. Maybe the plane's late or sits on the tarmac for 6 hours or some such thing like that. But the odds are that it's not going to end your life. You'll just end up with some kind of story that you'll be telling people for the next 40 years. But at least you've got a new story and you can tell people. So let's go back to the woman who meets the people at the bar. So if she goes to a different restaurant, for example, instead of going to that bar on Friday night, maybe she says, oh, let me go someplace else. Maybe then she tells people about the time she got stuck on the tarmac at the airport, whatever. When she starts interacting with different people, she starts making minor changes that gets her to go in a different direction and her life begins to change. If you want your life to change and you want things to happen, you need to make different choices. You need to go in the direction of the choices or need to go in the direction of where you want to go and make those choices. Because as long as you keep making the same choices, you're just going to go in the same direction. And you're going to keep telling yourself, why do I always end up in the same place? Why do these things always happen to me? Because you keep making the same choices. So this week, think about some of the choices you make and see if there's some way you can make a modification. It doesn't have to be drastic. I mean, it doesn't mean that you're going to go out suddenly and, I don't know, go to a strip club when you normally don't or something. Just go to do something ever so slightly different and make small changes and see what happens. Keep track of it. Let me know. If anybody's curious about this or wants to argue with me, let me know and we'll chat about that later. But I hope that this made some impact on you and it makes sense. So we'll talk about that later if you want. Just let me know. And until then, for those of you who are in the States, if you're at the end of August looking at September, I hope you have a good Labor Day. We will chat with you later. Bye.